Now, with all the latest stories making the headlines this afternoon, it's the ITV Lunchtime News.
Donald Trump charged again, this time for alleged election fraud in the state of Georgia. The former US president has been indicted by a grand jury along with 18 other associates, including lawyer Rudy Giuliani.
I am giving the defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender no later than noon on Friday, the 25th day of August.
Also this lunchtime, another data breach. Personal information about crime victims and witnesses wrongly released by 2 police forces. Could spiralling salaries spur higher interest rates? Plus,
Do you have any place to stay tonight? Don't you dare lie to me.
the retired American football star, whose story inspired an Oscar-winning movie, files a lawsuit claiming it was all based on lies. And one more sleep, and just Australia, who's down between England and a place in the World Cup final.
Unbelievable stadium, big crowd, semi-final, playing a great opposition. It is important to soak up those moments, yeah.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Lucrezia Millarini.
Good afternoon. Donald Trump has been formally charged with attempting to illegally overturn the 2020 presidential election. This time indicted by a grand jury in the pivotal state of Georgia. He stands accused of a string of crimes, including felony and racketeering. A number of his allies have also been indicted, including lawyer Rudy Giuliani, who's described the process as an affront to democracy. It's the 4th set of charges against the former president this year, although he still remains the frontrunner in the race to be the Republican candidate in the next US election. With the latest, here's our US correspondent, Dan Rivers.
In what was an extremely close election, the race in Georgia was among the tightest in the United States. But when the tally was complete, it was clear Biden had carried the state by the narrowest of margins, less than 0.25%. President Donald Trump wasn't having any of it, though, making this now infamous 67-minute call to the man in charge of Georgia's voting.
I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state.
The man on the other end of the call explained to Congress how there was nothing left to investigate.
What I knew is that we didn't have any votes to find. We had continued to look. We investigated, like I just shared the numbers with you. There were no votes to find.
The tone of the phone call then turned threatening when Brad Raffensperger refused to yield to Trump's requests.
I watched you this morning and you said, well, there was no criminality, but I mean, all of this stuff is very dangerous stuff. When you talk about no criminality, I think it's very dangerous for you to say that. So what are we going to do here, folks? I only need 11,000 votes. Fellas, I need 11,000 votes. Give me a break.
Today, the district attorney for Fulton County in Georgia, Fannie Willis, announced fresh charges against the 45th president for attempting to interfere in the election process.
The grand jury issued arrest warrants for those who are charged. I am giving the defendants the opportunity to voluntarily surrender no later than noon on Friday, the 25th day of August.
It wasn't just one phone call. Richard Barham was the lead election official, subjected to a torrent of threats from the public and huge pressure from local Republican politicians.
It's really sickening that you have somebody that can't accept the fact that he lost an election and that he tried to do whatever he could to overturn the results. And so if he's been indicted, and he deserves it.
The new charges also centre on this alleged breach of election security in Coffee County, Georgia in January 2021. It was facilitated by the head of the local Republican Party, Kathy Latham, who allowed computer experts in to examine voting systems in breach of all protocols. 2 weeks later, Trump allies involved with trying to overturn the election were allowed to stay in the supposedly secure office for hours. It will be the fourth criminal case he'll be fighting after he was charged earlier this month by federal prosecutors for attempting to overturn the 2020 election and the subsequent storming of the Capitol. Donald Trump knows the best way out of this legal minefield is to win the next election. The stakes for him in 2024 could not be higher. Dan Rivers, News at 10 in the United States.
Let's go live now to Dan in Washington. Dan, more serious charges for Donald Trump and his allies. He's accused of being part of a criminal enterprise.
Yeah, Lucrezia, I mean, the range of these charges is astonishing. Setting out really a sort of conspiracy using laws that are normally used to prosecute organised crime, kind of anti-mafia laws, racketeering laws. And they set out things like forgery, fakery, telling lies, trespass, theft, perjury, and racketeering. So quite incredible range and detail in this indictment that runs almost to 100 pages. 18 other people are charged alongside Donald Trump, including significantly his former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, and also the former New York Mayor, Rudy Giuliani, as well as many of Trump's former lawyers, including one who was very high profile a couple of years ago, Sidney Powell. She was leading really this kind of conspiracy theory that the election had been stolen, that there was widespread fraud going on, that the computer systems couldn't be trusted and that there needed to be an investigation. All of that has been thoroughly investigated multiple times in multiple states around the US and been found to be completely bogus. And really this prosecution, this indictment, seeks to kind of pin them down on the criminal activity that they engaged in to try and overturn the result in Georgia. You've got to remember that Georgia was one of these absolutely critical battleground states that Joe Biden won by the narrowest of margin. And as you heard in that phone call, now infamous phone call with Brad Raffensperger, by 11,780 votes.
All right, Dan in Washington, thank you. Next is lunchtime. The personal data of more than 1,000 people, including victims of crime, was included in Freedom of Information responses issued by Norfolk and Suffolk Police. I'm joined now by Martha Fairley. Martha, take us through what's happened here.
Well, this breach was first identified in January when Norfolk and Suffolk Police found the personal data of 1,230 people had been included in responses to Freedom of Information requests for crime statistics that were issued between April 2021 and March 22. Now, they included identifiable information about victims of crime, witnesses and suspects relating to crimes, including sexual offences, domestic incidents, assaults, hate crimes and thefts that dated back from January 2015 through to April last year. Now, that's particularly worrying when you consider that victims of sexual assaults are supposed to have anonymity guaranteed for life. Now, a joint statement has been issued by the two forces. They've said that a technical issue has led to some raw data being hidden in files that were released, but they can't be viewed simply by someone clicking and opening those files. You'd have to know what you were doing to find them. But so far, they have found nothing that suggests that anyone outside of the police has been able to access that data. They've started the process of contacting the individuals impacted, and they say that process should be complete by the end of September. Now, this, of course, comes just days after the incredibly serious breach of data by the Police Service of Northern Ireland when it published a document including the names of and details of around 10,000 officers and other staff, which it believes is now in the hands of dissident Republican groups. This latest breach is being investigated by the Information Commissioner's Office, will no doubt lead to questions about how our data is handled.
Yeah, I'm sure. Martha, thank you. 3 Bulgarian nationals have been arrested and charged in the UK by police investigating breaches of official secrets law. Bajza Zambasov, Kachin Inovova and Not Pictured, Orlin Rusev, have been charged with possession of false identity documents with improper intention. All 3 defendants last appeared at the Old Bailey last month. They have yet to enter pleas to the charges and are remanded in custody. Well, next is lunchtime. It may not feel like it for many, but pay is increasing at its fastest rate since records began in 2001. And for some, those higher earnings may not last for long. With predictions, the Bank of England could now raise rates next month because those pay rises could be fuelling stubbornly high inflation. Our political correspondent Libby Vina has more.
Has the economy begun to turn, with the pain of low wages and high prices easing? Today's figures suggest some people may be feeling better off, but only slightly. The Prime Minister, back from holiday in California, wouldn't be drawn on whether rising wages were good, just stressed the need to bear down on inflation.
We are making progress. I'm not complacent, and we'll have more numbers this week which hopefully show continued downward movement on inflation. But we've got to stick to the plan. That means taking the right, responsible decisions for the economy, being responsible with borrowing, with public sector pay.
According to the ONS, on average, pay grew at a record rate of 7.8%. But adjusted for inflation, measured on the Consumer Prices Index, in real terms it actually fell by 0.6%. On another measure, the CPIH, including house prices, pay rose by 0.1%. Meanwhile, unemployment rose slightly to 4.2%. Overall, do the figures suggest grounds for optimism? This economist says people are still worse off than they were.
When we take a step back, the picture isn't very positive. We've had 15 years of really sluggish wage growth. And in fact, when we compare pay in June this year to the trend before the financial crisis, people's weekly wages are £230 below what they would have been if pay had continued on its trend.
In hospitality, many businesses, such as this pub in Chester, are still finding it hard to keep going. The owner says he can't afford to pay his staff more.
I think we're struggling. I think in our industry, in hospitality, especially because there's such a scarce availability of staff. If you go to most venues, we're looking for staff. Is it difficult right now with the increase in energy bills, in cost of living? Absolutely, because we can't pass it on to the guests.
Despite a slight increase in unemployment, today's figures suggest few older people or those with long-term health issues are being tempted back into work.
All right, Libby's at Westminster this lunchtime. Libby, what does this all mean for interest rates?
Well, that is one key question today. Twice in that interview, the Prime Minister was asked about what he thought over those rising wages, and essentially he dodged the question, changed the subject, if you like, and started talking about the need to bear down on inflation and even be responsible with public sector pay. I think the worry is that rising wages could mean higher inflation and put paid to his ambition to halve inflation by the end of the year. The big question is what the Bank of England make of it all. Will they see these figures on rising wages as a reason to increase interest rates next month again? And I think many householders will obviously be concerned that while they may have seen more money in their pay packet, that's not much use if they're going to see their mortgage payments go up. So I think a very mixed picture, these figures today, but also concern for people who will have perhaps higher payments going out if interest rates go up.
All right, Libby in Westminster, thank you. Still to come. Is the rags to riches story turned into an Oscar-winning film built on a lie? And countdown to that World Cup semi-final kickoff. First to Hawaii, and the death toll from the wildfires on Maui has risen to 99, but officials say search teams have only covered around a quarter of the town of Lahaina so far. Hawaii's governor has said the search will take time and warned the number of deaths will increase. He estimates teams will find the remains of up to 20 people a day until they finish their work. Now, survivors mourn their dead. Those with missing loved ones wait for news, while correspondent Peter Smith is on Maui and sent this report.
Another day dawns here in Hawaii and more grim news for the people of Maui. The number of dead continues to rise, and it will do so in the days and weeks ahead. The relatives of the missing are being told to brace themselves. This is going to be a slow and painful process. Much of the identification of bodies will be relying on DNA samples from the ashes. We're also in a situation where while Maui is dealing with the dead, they're trying to support the living. There are more than 1,400 people who have lost their homes and livelihoods overnight in these wildfires, and there are 6 shelters on the island currently giving people temporary accommodation. The biggest behind me at the moment here is the War Memorial Gymnasium. Aid is getting in. We're hearing some questions and criticisms from people here who survived the fires saying, why did the early warning evacuation systems not give us time to flee? Did that cost lives? Important to say though, eyewitness testimony also telling us that the fire simply spread so quickly with 80-mile-an-hour winds coming in at the time that by the time the sirens were triggered, the flames were already on their homes, and the only thing they could do was grab what they could, grab their loved ones and run. There is pressure now on Joe Biden to visit this site. People in Hawaii, though, telling us it's not a presidential visit they need. They need the aid to get here faster from a federal level that will give them hope that they can rebuild their lives here in Maui.
Peter Smith reporting. Some other news. The Association for Police and Crime Commissioners has told parents they should be held accountable for their actions of their children taking part in social media crazes. It follows the incident seen in London's Oxford Street last week, where youngsters were encouraged on social media to take part in mass looting. Now, an American football star whose rags to riches tale was told in the Oscar-winning Hollywood film The Blind Side has claimed the story is built on a lie. In the film, Michael Oher is adopted by a wealthy couple and becomes a star NFL player. The reality is very different, according to the retired sports star. He was never adopted and was a victim of deception. Daniel Henry reports.
Do you have any place to stay tonight? Don't you dare lie to me.
It was sold as a true story, with the perfect Hollywood ending. But now, the man it's based on says,
I think it took away the hard work and the dedication that I created from a child. I think the biggest for me is, being portrayed, not being able to read or write.
Michael Oher's career took him to the peak of American football. Before he hit the big time, there were problems off the field, leading him to live with people that he wasn't related to.
I heard you got your new mama now. She fine too.
His story was made into a film called The Blind Side. It was based on his time with the Tui family.
Team is your family, Michael.
It won an Oscar and made more than $300 million in royalties. Oher says he wasn't paid a penny, and the portrayal was far from perfect.
When you go into a locker room and your teammates don't think you can learn a playbook, that weighs heavy.
He claims they tricked him into signing a document while he was a teenager, which gave them legal authority to make business deals in his name. Deals that would pay them and their 2 birth children millions of dollars in royalties, according to these court documents. Where other parents of Michael's classmates saw Michael simply as a nice kid in need, the Tuis saw something else. A gullible young man whose athletic talent could be exploited for their own benefit. The conservatorship to which he consented on the basis that doing so would make him a member of the Tui family, in fact, provided him with no familial relationship with the Tuis. Lawyers representing the Tuis haven't made any comment on the case, but Sean Tui Jr. had this to say.
You will never hear me say anything bad about Michael Oher in any capacity, other than I'm upset that he feels the way that he does, and I think some of the things that were mentioned in the probate or book, whatever, I don't necessarily agree with, and I don't remember it happening like that.
So, the story that won an Oscar has ended up in court. A Hollywood ending, but not the one anyone wanted. Daniel Henry, ITV News.
To the Women's World Cup now, where Spain have booked their place in the final after a dramatic finish to their match against Sweden. The first semi-final saw 3 goals in the final 10 minutes, with Spain taking the lead in the 81st. Sweden came roaring back, scoring 2 minutes before the close, but were barely done celebrating when Olga Carmona sent Spain into Wonderland moments later with a last-gasp winner. And finally, England and Australia now know what awaits them in the final. All that's left is a simple matter of getting there. Anticipation is reaching fever pitch down under as the two old foes get ready to renew acquaintances in a sporting rivalry which spans more than just football. Our sports editor Steve Scott has this report from Sydney.
A sing-along for the team doctor, who has mercifully had a quiet trip so far. All Lionesses were fit to train today, a squad within touching distance of a dream that has eluded every other England football team for 57 years, namely reaching a World Cup final.
As players, we embrace these moments, and it's all about us just, like I said, sticking to tasks, executing the game plan, and yeah, embracing the moment. It's a semi-final, it's a World Cup. You want that environment, you want it to be tense, you want it to be noisy.
This venue has hosted many iconic moments. Johnny Wilkinson's kick to win the Rugby World Cup was one, and Australia's face of the Sydney Olympics, Cathy Freeman's stunning 400-metre gold, is another. Both teams have the opportunity to add to that roll of honour this week.
Tomorrow this place will be dripping in green and gold, and the vast majority of the 75,000 inside here will be desperate for the Lionesses to lose. So England's first challenge is to silence the crowd and start to spread fear and doubt through the Australian team.
This sports-mad country is beside itself with anticipation. Will that expectation inspire or intimidate the players?
The amount of support that we have from all over the country has been absolutely unreal, and they're really like a 12th man out there for us, and I really do believe they've gotten us over the line on more times than one.
Pat Cummins, Australia's cricket captain who knows what it takes to beat England, said today there's no better feeling when you do.
There's nothing more satisfying than, as an Aussie, kind of getting one up on our English mates.
And Nick White, the Wallabies Rugby World Cup scrum half, admitted losing would be hard to bear.
Not only is it a big game in a World Cup here at home, but against an opposition, so against the big brother, and hopefully we go up.
England now know if they win, Spain awaits on Sunday. But there's a sizable job to do before then, taking on a team in unstoppable form with an entire country behind them. Steve Scott, ITV News, Sydney.
And that is it for now. The latest where you are is next, but from everyone on the Lunchtime team, bye-bye.